Yo, what's going on guys? How you doing? Arekkz here and welcome to Nioh. Now this is a game that I am super looking forward to. I feel like I say that a lot. What can I say? I'm a gamer. I look forward to a lot of games. Anyway, I'm looking forward to Nioh because this is another one of those brutally difficult, ultra challenging, makes you want to throw your controller style games. If you're not into that sort of thing, maybe this one isn't for you. But if you like a challenge, then definitely keep your eyes on Nioh. So in this video, I'm going to bring you guys some gameplay from the full game. PlayStation very kindly sent me an early copy so I can check it out, show it to you guys. And at the same time, I'm going to share my impressions. So if you enjoyed the video, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below, let me know if you guys are looking forward to the game. Maybe you guys have already pre-ordered it, maybe you're going to be picking it up. Either way, let me know. Now, first up, talking dates, the game comes out on February the 7th, of course, on PS4, and that is next week. So not long to wait now. It's also been built with some pretty cool PS4 Pro support, but I'll speak a little bit more about that at the latter part of the video. First up, I want to talk about difficulty, because of course, when talking about a game like this, you can't really talk about it without talking about how difficult it really is. I mean, this is 2017's Death Simulator. It's like trying to talk about Dark Souls without saying you're going to die a lot. In fact, I think I died about 145 times in my Dark Souls 3 playthrough. Either way, this is a game very similar to that in that it is punishing and you learn through trial and error, you learn through dying, you learn through many mistakes, and all of that in turn makes you a better player for it. Now, it's interesting as well to sort of play this game now it's finished, because I have been following this since the alpha last year. The game's obviously been in development for quite some time, but it only actually sort of hit my radar last year, shortly after completing Dark Souls 3, when the alpha came out. We were of course able to test a very early version of the game, and then since then they've done a beta trial, they did the final trial, and they've been iterating and improving on it each time they do that. And it's really cool to see that, and really cool to have been able to track that, because when I first played the alpha, that was so difficult, but to an almost unfair extent. See, one of the things that makes these games so good is that typically when you die, you take a step back and you think, alright, I died there because I made a mistake. Not because the game was unfair, the game was broken, anything like that. It's like, alright, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I got too greedy, maybe I tried to hit when I shouldn't have done. Something like that, and generally speaking, the same thing happens in Dark Souls. You're like, alright, I made a mistake, let me go back and not do that the next time round. However, when I played the Nioh Alpha, some of the enemies were so brutal, and the weapon degradation system meant that basically after sort of 3 or 4 battles, your weapon was broken. So it was definitely in a position where they were obviously testing out difficulty, and they'd obviously slid it right to the max to see exactly how it felt. Either way, since then, they've fine-tuned it, and I think it's at a really good place right now. It's definitely that position at the moment where when you're playing through, it provides you with plenty of challenge, plenty of difficulty, plenty of opportunities to die. But each time that happens, again, you're always able to take a step back, analyze the situation, and be like, alright, I messed up there, and it's not because the game was cheap. So it's safe to say difficulty is in a great place. Do bear in mind, there is no difficulty setting in this game, so there's no option to choose easy. This is literally hard from the start. So it's basically trial by fire, but as I mentioned, you don't really kind of play a game like this or go into a game like this expecting it to be easy. In fact, this is made by Team Ninja, so they already know how to make pretty difficult games, so to see them turn their hands on a Dark Souls-esque game is really cool. So, moving on from there, of course the setting itself takes place in Japan, so it's sort of like a Japanese-themed Dark Souls. And while the game itself actually starts out in London and you play as an Englishman or a Scotsman, not too sure based on his accent, either way, most of the game takes place in Japan, and that of course means all the gear that you get, the weapons you get, are all going to be themed appropriately. It also means that some of the bosses you fight later on take inspiration from Japanese mythology, so you do get some really cool bosses and also really brutally difficult bosses. Either way, very cool setting. As someone that's always had an interest in Japan, Japanese mythology, then to be able to dive into a game like this is of course an easy win for me. Now speaking about gameplay in this game is so good. Like the combat system, if you guys have played anything like Dark Souls, is sort of reminiscent in that, you know, it's all about stamina management, managing your health. Whenever you're in combat, you always have that decision of, you know, should I be attacking now, should I be evading? And of course, you build your character around this. There are loads of different ways to build your character, depending on the way you want to play. You can of course spec into, you know, effectively health to bolster yourself up just so you can take a lot more hits. You can spec into stamina so you can evade a lot more. You can spec into ninjutsu if you want to go down the sort of slightly more magic route. You can spec with specific weapon types in mind, whether that be heavy weapons, light weapons, and of course you can also spec around things like your guardian spirit. So again, much like Dark Souls, I am unfortunately going to make a lot of comparisons to that game throughout this video, but much like that, you can spec yourself depending on how you want to play as a person. So I typically go in with A lot of stamina, because also as a Monster Hunter player, I'm basically trained to roll if ever there's danger. So I tend to spec into stamina, or ki as it's known in this, because that basically affords me a lot more opportunities to evade. And also if I'm trying to learn to fight a boss, then having the ability to evade is super important. Ki in this game is very cool as well, because it's not just stamina. There's also a really cool system that is effectively called ki pulse, whereby anytime you use up stamina, there's this sort of like blue effect that gathers around your character. And if you press R1 at the right time, you can basically ki pulse, which allows you to regenerate some of your stamina. And if done at the exact right time, you can also cleanse yokai fields, which are basically these sort of like dark fields. Whenever you fight like a yokai, which is effectively like a demon, then they basically create these fields where when you're standing in them, your ki will not replenish. So if you can do a ki pulse and you can cleanse that field, then of course it makes it much safer for you. So there's some really cool systems underlying it. Also, there is a kind of stance system to the combat. You have basically low stance, medium stance, and high stance. Low is of course fast and weak. Medium is basically your all-round, and high is of course heavy and slow, use a lot of stamina. So you'll of course jump between these during combat, depending on your encounter. Depending on the boss you're fighting, of course, if you want to deal more damage and you have an opening, you switch to high stance, do a lot of damage and get out. But if you're fighting something that's quicker, then you might want to go low stance. Yes, you'll be doing less damage, but of course you're also a lot more mobile in the process. So jumping between these stances is also super important. You can also equip different weapons and multiple weapons, so you can swap between them in combat on the fly. So if you pick, say, your favourite ones, for example, I run a lot of the time with the Kusarigama, which is basically like a sickle and chain, and then pair that with a spear because, you know, if things get bad, you can run away and poke people from a distance. So again, you can swap to them during combat to kind of create some pretty cool combos, but also just if the battle kind of tends to go against you, then you might want to sort of have a backup. You also have ranged weapons as well, so there are plenty of things to use, and of course, if you do go down the ninjutsu route and you start doing magic and stuff, then there's also that whole component as well. I've never really been a magic user in games like this. I tend to just go for blades, so that's probably something that, at least in my first playthrough, I won't explore too heavily, but either way, the option is there. One of the other cool things about the gameplay system as well is the notion of guardian spirits. These are basically these sort of deities that are assigned to you, and you can swap them out during the game. You can get different ones, but to begin with, you pick one to start with. There is basically one that is tied to strength, one that's tied to evasion, and one that's tied to vitality. So I chose evasion, and as you play through, you basically build up your spirit meter, and once it maxes out, you can do what is known as a living weapon, where you press triangle or circle together. You basically go into like ultra mode, and temporarily during that mode you can't take damage. Your health bar and your ki bar basically turn into this spirit bar, and it gradually depletes, plus of course big attacks will deplete it a lot more heavily. So it's effectively like a ultra or a super or like a power move that you can use either if you're in a sticky situation and you're about to die, so you can then suddenly go living weapon provided you have it, and then it might save your life. Or if you're going to be fighting a boss and you want to do like a big bit of damage, then there's also that as an option. So they are really cool, and sensible use of those will of course mean the difference between, you know, life and death in some situations, but also the ability to choose different ones means that depending on the way you play, again, there are spirits to basically bolster that playstyle. There's also, of course, loads of different stuff to collect around the world. There are tons of different weapons. Of course, everything you're killing, anytime you kill stuff or loot stuff, you're finding pieces of armor, finding weapons. You'll, of course, be replacing these relatively frequently as you go. And there are also these little green dudes that you can find hidden around, and there are basically a number of those per stage, per mission. And then when you return them, you can basically go and visit your shrine, which is akin to your bonfire, and you can then go and get a blessing from them. So it might be something like finding more Amrita, which is akin to souls. They're basically what you use to level up. Or there might be something where you get more currency, more of something else. Basically, it's a little reward for finding these little guys. So for the kind of completionists out there, you're A, going to want to find them just because you want to complete it, but also B, because they'll actually give you useful bonuses. Also, with regards to leveling up, as well as spending points in your personal stats, you can also spec towards specific weapons. You basically have these different scrolls that you can unlock, and these will then enhance some of the weapons you use. So you might specifically spec towards, say, the Kusarigama, and that'll give you more abilities, more stuff to do, and that will of course enhance your late game play. Also, if you're one of those people that likes to play with friends, then there is actually a multiplayer component in this. You can basically summon your friend into your world. So again, they can kind of roam around with you, help you defeat enemies, help you defeat bosses. If they die in the world, then they'll of course get kicked out and you need to resummon them, but there is a multiplayer component. So the last thing I want to speak about very quickly is PS4 Pro support, because in this game, it is done really, really well. I'm not talking about visuals. What I'm actually talking about is the fact that you have options. There are 3 different modes if you're playing on PS4 Pro. The gameplay you're seeing is recorded on a Pro. It's not recorded in 4K. It's recorded in 1080, but it's taking advantage of the options. You basically have action mode, where you basically choose frame rate over visuals. So of course the visuals still look great, but the main priority in this mode is frame rate. So you're going to be playing at 60 FPS Whereas if you switch over to movie mode, the visuals are prioritized, but you're instead playing 30 FPS. And there's then a variable movie mode where, again, visuals are priority, but the frame rate can fluctuate in situations. So at times you will peak a little bit above 30, but for the most part, in a game like this, if you want to get the most out of combat and you want to sort of be fluid and sort of high intensity, then I would definitely recommend the action mode. So that's really cool, definitely a really cool option, but I have also played this just running on regular PS4, it also runs very nicely. So, for the time being, that's pretty much it. I am super happy to finally be hands-on with this game and happy that it's basically almost out for you guys to play as well. So if you do want a challenge, if you guys are Dark Souls fans, definitely check it out. Even if you don't play Dark Souls, but you just like the idea of a difficult, challenging game, definitely check it out. But for the time being, that's pretty much it from me. So thank you for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.